I'm from Southern California. Not really. So my experience with the California Botanic Society is in Southern California. It's about half the size. It's pretty quaint. So this is tremendous and a really great audience. I'm excited to be here, and I really like Chico, actually. So yeah, I'm finishing up a postdoc studying fog on farms, and I'm happy to talk more about that with you over drinks. This study that I'm going to present today is a follow-up from my dissertation work studying Bishop Pine water relations on Santa Cruz Island. So my talk today is not only going to focus on the effect of historic drought on population dynamics of Bishop pines, a rare endemic species to California and northern Baja, but I'm also going to bring up an open question about what is the impact of these mortality events on fog hydrology in these ecosystems. So what we learn from the study down south can be applied to what is going on up in Northern California as well. So the prevalence of tree mortality in the West and really the globe is dominant in continental climates and montane regions. So Jason Sexton brought up earlier, ponderosa pine mortality in California. There's also the pinyon juniper forest dieback in New Mexico and lodgepole pine in Colorado. There are fewer examples of coastal forest mortality, but here I am with bishop pines that have their severe widespread mortality out on the island. And coastal climates are thought to be buffered from these extreme climate events, but clearly we see that this is not the case. This mortality event is not unique per se. So what I'm showing here is the aridity index, which is basically variation in precipitation and vapor pressure deficit, or the dryness of the atmosphere over time, where negative values indicate greater aridity. And so we've observed bishop pine mortality in the past during these drought periods, so the 87 to 91 drought. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence and a study to support that there's widespread mortality. I did a project following the brief yet intense drought between 2007 and 2009 in this stand, showing widespread dieback of these pines. And here, after the historic drought, I believe this is the most severe dieback that we've observed in this record. And what we don't understand is the impact of these drought events on multiple age classes of trees. And this is really important, because if you're going to make predictions about how the species and populations are going to persist in the future with more drought conditions, you better know what the little guys are doing, right? So that's one of the main questions underlying this project. So bishop pines are a really cool species. It's rare, relict, endemic to coastline of California and northern Baja, as Dylan Burge pointed out earlier. And here on Santa Cruz Island is the largest extent of the species range in California. And if you were to take a tour of Santa Cruz Island, which I recommend you do, you would find that the pines are restricted to the north-facing slopes, so the cooler, wetter microhabitats. And so this they're sparse on the southern, drier slopes. But this goes to show that they're already in marginal habitat. So the impact of drought on the survival of the species has implications for the distribution of bishop pines as a whole. We also know that this is a fog-influenced forest. So there are multiple lines of evidence from research conducted on the island showing that bishop pines use fog water to grow. We also know from a recent study that I published that sapling trees are especially vulnerable to summertime dry down, but they're also really more responsive to fog water inputs. So fog is important for I would argue that fog is really important for the survival and persistence of the species, and at least is very important for the physiology of these plants. And so Emily touched on this already, but the way that fog influences ecosystems, I thought I'd reiterate. It's blind or funny. So when the fog rolls in, it shades the big umbrella, so it reduces heat loading on the land, so there's a relief in that way in atmospheric water stress. The canopy intercepts fog water, and that water drips to the ground, which increases soil moisture. This is a quart-sized yogurt container I stuck under a tree, and this is filled to the top and poured over the brim after one night of fog. And then, as Emily mentioned, the species, I've also shown in a greenhouse experiment, there's potential for foliar uptake of fog water as well. So there are multiple ways that fog can influence these ecosystems. And beyond the effects on individual trees, we know at the landscape scale that fog is an important explanatory variable of where trees are likely to die or not following drought. So using a remote sensing approach and aerial photo interpretation, I ran a random forest model with a whole suite of explanatory variables, both topographic and climatic, and we found that coastal fog patterns, spatial and temporal patterns, is a really good predictor of where trees are likely to survive following drought. So here, the cooler colors indicate a high probability of survival, and this is where it's more foggy and where trees are growing really well. So with this in mind, we want to know how drought affects the persistence of this species in this fog-influenced forest. And so the big overarching question is, will this species persist on the island in future droughts? What is the vulnerability of these different age classes to drought? What are the climate and biotic drivers of mortality? And then what are some feedbacks between mortality and this alternative water source that occurs in the summer? So we set out, a big team of us from Oregon State University set out and monitored 24 plots across the stand. So it was like a 5-day survey, and at each plot has 6.3 meters radius, within which we measured the DBH and height of all trees. We took tree cores from both live and dead individuals to quantify the age and birth rate. We noted whether trees were alive or dead. We measured canopy dieback, seedlings and saplings, and bark beetle infestation. There were other things, but these are the things that I'll be focusing on. And so what we found is of the trees surveyed, most of them were alive, 67%, and 33% were dead. Interestingly, all of the trees that we surveyed that were dead died during this historic drought period. So we didn't come across any individuals that died from previous drought events. And if we look at the age and distribution of both live and dead trees, what we see, so this is number of trees surveyed, and the tree age in years old as of 2014, we see that there were a lot of young trees that survived this drought. And we also see that there's a fair number of older trees that survived as well, presumably because they had a deep enough rooting system to endure the dry conditions. When we look at the dead tree population, we see that there's two distinct cohorts that died during the historic drought period. What I'm calling teenagers, between about 10 and 16, and these young adults, 29 to 33. We only encountered a few older dead individuals. So to address the question about the vulnerability of these age classes, I want to dive into this dead population a little bit more. So this is the percent of dead trees that died during this historic drought, And again, I'm showing age in years, but I'm also showing the year of establishment. So here let's map on the climatological conditions under which these trees lived, maybe understand why they died during the drought. Let's focus on these young adults. The 82-83 water year was extremely wet. This was a good year for establishment. We see that that's when these trees survived or established. And then there was the 87-91 drought. So by the time this drought came along, these trees were, like 4 to 6 years old. And they lived through this drought, but they did not survive the 2012 to 14 drought. So two potential hypotheses here. One is that the 87 to 91 drought wasn't severe enough to cause them to die. Another potential explanation is over the time since establishment, they were able to grow, they put on biomass, but then when the historic drought hit, they were sort of too large. They didn't have enough resources to support their biomass and succumbed to mortality. We also see that this cohort, a number of them established again in a wet year, and years following were average rainfall years on average. And presumably, this younger cohort might have been limited to water resources during the historic drought, given the shallow rooting distribution, and maybe there was also a lot of high competition. So these are the potential climatological explanations for the mortality event that we observed or the impact of drought on age classes, but we also saw bark beetles. So 80% of the trees that we surveyed that were dead had bark beetle infestation, and the smaller percent of the live ones also had bark beetle infestation. So beetle attack is, I don't really like to think about it this way, but it's a complicating factor in that it can mask the analysis of how climate variables alone and growth rate and dieback relate to one another, but it's certainly an important part of the system. I just want to mention that there's mortality of bishop pines in the northern population at Bishop Pines as well, and there aren't bark beetle infestations up there, but nonetheless there's other pathogens that are affecting those populations. So there's a lot of death, but we also observed a lot of life. And so this is just a table of the different age and size classes of the young individuals and percent live and dead for each of them. And so we see that there's a lot of regeneration during the drought period. But the begging question that I have is, will these recruits survive in the future? And the reason I ask that, it relates to the landscape and the fog. So this is an image from Santa Cruz Island. This is a south-facing slope. So this is sort of, you don't see this too often, but here's a bishop pine on a south-facing slope. And here, this green fluffy patch below are like 100 plus bishop pine saplings. This is Chris Still, he's about 6 foot tall. So you can sort of see that there's a lot of seemingly well-established saplings under this dead adult. And so I mentioned before that one of the ways that fog inputs or fog water comes into the ecosystem is through fog drip. And here we have a situation where these established under an adult canopy and presumably were irrigated through the summer through fog drip. But we see also that canopies die back entirely following drought. And so when the fog comes in, how much drip are we actually going to get from these events? And so is there actually the water resources that can support the growth and persistence of these younger individuals? And so a lot of attention in tree mortality research has focused on the patterns and mechanisms underlying those events, but there are few studies that have investigated the feedbacks between changing forest structure and the water, carbon, and energy balance of these systems. And I think that there's some really interesting, this being one of them, open questions about those feedbacks. So in conclusion, we found that the historic drought leads to widespread bishop pine mortality, that the older, bigger trees survive preferentially, and that these younger individuals are most vulnerable. We see that bark beetle infestation is a factor in the system. While there's high recruitment, right now the question begs of whether or not they'll persist down the road. So with that, thank you.